Hello again and welcome to Pearl Magazine. The government scrapped all the anti-speculative measures on properties amid the falling of residential prices. Some potential buyers and investors came out to browse the flats, but they may not be ready to make a decision to buy because they're still cautious amid high interest rates. Alice Khan talked to a property developer about their strategies to attract buyers. Potential home buyers flocked to the show flat of Henderson Land's newly released project at Chengshawan. A batch of 138 units were sold within 4 hours of this first weekend after Financial Secretary Paul Chan delivered the budget speech. Market sentiment rebounded after all the spicy measures were scrapped. That means special stamp duty, or SSD, buyer's stamp duty, BSD, and new residential stamp duty, AVD, need not be paid for any residential property transactions. Hong Kong Monetary Authority also suspended the interest rate stress test, which means home buyers can get a mortgage more easily.
In Hong Kong, especially a place like this, the apartments are very small and the rents are very high. So if you are able to own a property, obviously I think it's easier, it's better.
For myself, of course, I can invest. Or maybe if I have more money, of course, I need to consider to make an investment.
Homeowner Kit Chung is happy with the scrapping of the decade-old property curb policy.
This property was just purchased within 2 years. So in case the spicy measure is not removed, I am still subject to the special stamp duty in case I sell the property now. So first of all, I think removing the spicy measure provides me more flexibility of considering that whether I should sell my property at the current market.
After the scrapping of the buyer's stamp duty, special stamp duty, and AVD, or new residential stamp duty, buyers only need to pay $100 stamp duty for a flat valued at $3 million and below, and up to 4.25% for a flat over $21.7 million. Kit is also considering buying one more flat because of the lighter tax burden.
Now the residential properties price, which is at a historical low level, so it may be a good opportunity or window for me to invest into the residential property market. Previously, in case I'm buying a very expensive residential property at the highest ranking, and then at the same time I'm holding this property, and then I need to pay for the AVD, which is 7.5%. Now it is just subject to 4.25% maximum. So now the tax expenses, even for the expensive residential property, which is just 1/3 of the previous tax payable.
Developers took the opportunity to unload their inventory. This is Kai Tak Runway residential area. The supply of new units stands at a high number of 13,000. Its inconvenient location has always been an issue. With the scrapping of anti-speculative measures and the recent announcement of the construction of a monorail, it appears more promising. Developers such as KWA International launched its new project at Kai Tak Runway.
Then, Tony, can you show me the potential routes?
Yeah, sure. The latest design will run along the whole runway, okay? Starting from the cruise terminal, the residential area, and then the metro park, and then the Kai Tak Sport Park. And lastly, we'll connect to the Kai Tak MTR station.
These newly released 1,017 apartments consist of 1-bedroom to 3-bedroom flats. Flat sizes range from 288 square feet to 771 square feet. Tony Wan, Director of Sales and Marketing of KWA International, says the response is good. He says 20 to 30% of buyers are local investors.
They come back to the market again. We see quite some investors buy more than one unit in some developments for long-term investments.
Tony says the scrapping of cooling measures has also attracted rich mainlanders to purchase their units. He says 50% of buyers come from the mainland.
the government introduced some good policy about attracting tenants from mainlands. They, in fact, don't want to secure the Hong Kong ID card. They just want to invest in Hong Kong or station in Hong Kong and buy some units in Hong Kong.
Before the cancellation of the cooling measures, total home sales transactions declined by 5% within 1 year to 43,000, while residential prices fell by 9.4% between January 2023 to the beginning of this year. Sales activity increased after the scrapping of the decade-old property curbs. In March, the primary market recorded over 3,600 transactions, compared with a monthly average of 896 in 2023. But developers didn't raise their prices.
Even with such a high momentum, such a high demand of unit, developers are very smart. They're still holding on to their old prices, meaning they're still holding on to those discounted price. The overall stock is piling up up to a number of like 110,000 units available. So it's with today's holding cost, meaning the interest rate standing at such a high level, it's going to cause some sort of financial pressure to some of the developers. As a result, they have to sell as many as possible to keep the money turned, to keep the cash flow, to sustain those high financial costs.
Tony says the strategy is to offer attractive pricing packages to lure buyers.
We are just a manufacturers. We produce some products and then sell it to the market. But if we have accumulated a lot of stock in our warehouse, then how can we continue our business?
Developers like Tony also offer favorable terms, such as longer completion periods to lure buyers.
We may have some package that only need the buyer to pay a little bit down payment at the outset, and then allow them to arrange their finance for a certain period of time and then complete the transaction. We may allow more than 6 months or even a year, or even up to the completion of the project.
Although the market sentiment has improved in the first-hand market, the second-hand market is still under pressure. According to Centerline's City Leading Index, second-hand property prices continue to fall by 0.81% after scrapping the property curb measures. It dropped by 1.45% compared to last month. On this day, this property investor begins his search for a reasonably priced flat.
It is over 900 square feet.
The living area is quite big.
Yes, it is very practical. You can see it is quite wide. It can fit a 3-seated sofa. A few chairs are also able to fit in here.
The efficiency rate is 80%, right?
I think so, over 80%. The quality of major developers' projects is good. You can see the curvy curtain wall. The construction cost is higher. It also has a spectacular sea view.
Yip says he prefers to buy second-hand properties.
Second-hand properties are better. The flat prices are relatively cheaper. I could purchase a bigger unit at a cost of a new flat. Rental yield is higher. If I find some nice flats, I'd probably buy 1 or 2 flats for rental income.
He says it may be a good time to enter the market.
The residential market is almost at the bottom. The chance of a further drop is slim. Even if it declines further, the percentage is not huge. If the property price increases or even if it falls 1 year later, I can still sell them right away to cash in because there is no SSD. So it is a good time to enter the market. Prior to the policy address, you need to pay new residential stamp duty. Now, stamp duty for 20 million flats is around 4.2%. If you purchase a 3 million flat, you only need to pay $100 stamp duty. It was $220,000.
But Chung is very cautious about the outlook of the residential market.
We're expecting the price will further go down by roughly around 10%. Hong Kong economy is still bad. We are still having high interest rate because of the US interest rate. And thirdly, our motherland, our mainland China economy, they're on its way to recover at the moment, but the pace is still slow.
Tony Wan expects that with interest rates falling, this will benefit the residential property.
We believe that the interest rate will be reduced because of the election of the president of US. They will do some good news to the market. If the interest rate is really reduced, it will boost up a lot of sectors, including real estate.
When we come back, is the aviation industry able to keep up with increased demand from the flying public despite Boeing's incidents and the rising cost of travel? Stay with us. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. It's been over a year since the world has taken down pandemic restrictions and open borders. People have responded by taking flight with a vengeance as international tourism recovered by end of 2023 to 88% of its pre-pandemic figures, according to the United Nations World Travel Organization. As demand for air travel grows against the backdrop of Boeing's woes, manpower shortages, and rising costs, is there enough supply of manpower, flights, and even aircraft to service these eager travelers? It's been a turbulent start to 2024 for Boeing as a door blew off an Alaskan Airlines flight shortly after takeoff on January 5th. The culprit was found to be a loose door plug. Further inspections found at least 5 more 737 MAX 9s with loose door plugs. In March, another emergency landing due to fumes in the cabin on a 737-800 in Portland, Oregon. Then a 265-pound wheel falling off a 777 bound for Japan from San Francisco. And then the death due to a reported self-inflicted wound of Boeing whistleblower John Barnett, who was currently giving legal interviews in a case against Boeing. And recently, Dave Calhoun stepped down as CEO of Boeing. Locally, Cathay Pacific has canceled nearly 800 flights in 2 months. That's about 11 flights canceled a day out of 250. In 2020, the company had cut its workforce by almost a quarter, with 8,500 job losses. The Hong Kong Aircrew Officers Association said in a recent statement that the airline would need 3 years to restore capacity to pre-pandemic levels. Cathay responded that it has over 2,600 pilots and has resumed 70% of its pre-COVID capacity. Against this backdrop, demand for air travel is booming.
The demand actually surpassed, I would say, right? But there's still some limitation. If we look at the data, we know the capacity is not back to where it were yet. But with people's eager to travel outbound, to travel overseas, this is the trend that we have, right? We see the booking for flights is always having a very significant increase when we compare with 2019, which is pre-COVID.
Eddie Yip of Trip.com, the top online travel booking platform globally, says their data shows people are spending more than they did on travel pre-pandemic. The company's global gross merchandise value, or GMV, in Q4 of last year was up 100% compared to pre-COVID levels. Transportation ticketing revenue was $2.6 billion, a 123% year-on-year increase. Package tour revenue and corporate travel revenue for the fourth quarter was $442 million and $317 million respectively. Eddie adds that on ordinary days, an average of 1.7 flights are booked by people using their platform.
So that means everyone is traveling out more than one trip on flight. If we compare that with 2019, that's around 140% growth.
Along with the desire to travel, Eddie says that taking down visa barriers is also fueling travel. China recently extended its visa-free policy to 11 more countries, as well as ease of monetary transactions. But while travel demand has grown post-COVID, Airbus and Boeing haven't kept up the pace, with issues from manpower and materials slowing them down. According to Polaris Research, the fastest-growing sector with demand for next-generation airplanes is the Asia-Pacific, fueled by the growing populations of India and China. According to a report by Statista, as of 2020, Airbus and Boeing hold a combined market share of approximately 87% in the global commercial aviation market, with Airbus holding a 55% share and Boeing holding a 32% share. Mark Martin, an aviation consultant, said airlines in Asia will have it hard in the next 2 years, adding that he expected to see an increased demand for China's COMAC airplanes, which have been flying for the last 2 to 3 years. COMAC is the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China. Their current C919 competes with the Airbus A320neo and Boeing's 737 MAX 8. The plane had its maiden flight in 2017 and began flying commercially last May 2023 for China Eastern Airlines.
That's why, if you look at the COMAC's design, they basically have even a wider body, although this type of aircraft is typically called a narrow-body aircraft. So the passenger comfort basically have some advantage. The engine of the aircraft is from CFM, which is a US and Europe company, and the landing gear, the wheels, they are all like US, Europe companies are supporting this. The aviation, the control system are from US.
Certified to fly in China, China Eastern Airlines has been flying 4 of COMAC's C919 since last year. The company began the process for European Union Aviation Safety Agency, or EASA, in 2018. Assistant Professor Mo Long Duan of Hong Kong University of Science and Technology says the aircraft mileage covers the furthest points in China, enough to cover all the domestic routes in the country. He adds that the company needs a certain amount of actual flying data for verification. The engine, landing gear, and avionics are all from established Western companies. Mo Long says the reason for this is their proven safety record, which also means those parts have already passed international standards.
These are the data which, after 10 or 20 years of usage, what are the performance? They actually have the complete set of this data, which this type of data in air is something that you cannot get in a relatively short of time. Those companies have more reliability in their parts for the aviation industry, where safety is very crucial.
He says there is a latecomer's advantage to the industry, the same as any industry, as engines, which are now much larger and fuel efficient, and other systems for airplanes have changed over the decades.
If you look at its drag, probably it will be reduced due to the now we have more dedicated like optimization tools, experimental facilities, and numerical analysis to support the design of aircraft. The COMAC and Airbus design, they basically leave a huge room basically under their wing, so that basically they can comfortably hang the engine there. The newest like LEAP engines there. For the enhanced fuel efficiency. The Boeing aircraft also have the engine there, but it's kind of merging into the aircraft. But it basically need to redesign its aircraft control system to have a lot of software compensations introduced into this configuration.
Mo Long says that unlike other industries, it's not a simple matter to completely redesign a new plane the way you would an automobile. One can only make modifications because of the safety verification process. So Boeing's design isn't too far off from when it was first developed.
It's very complicated, and also safety is much more crucial in aviation industry compared to car industry. So in that regard, you need to consider basically the weight distribution of the aircraft. You need to consider about basically its resistance to wind gust. And also you need to consider basically how do you manufacture those kind of composite structures. Because in order to make them light, you typically have very complex manufacturing procedures to basically make those parts. Especially changing the aircraft layout, airframe, will require completely different verification processes, which most of the company cannot live up with those kind of large update.
Brunei's Gallop Air has reportedly ordered aircraft from Comac. According to Reuters, the airline hopes to fly the C919 planes by the end of this year, making them the only airliner outside of China to operate them. Pearl Magazine reached out to Cathay Pacific about whether they would be willing to purchase from Comac, and they replied, "The Cathay Group looks to engage strategic suppliers, including Comac, in helping the development of products that meet our requirements. This can help ensure the competitiveness of the aircraft on an international stage."
The Comac, at its first step, it will be very challenging to enter the European and US market because for obvious reasons. So I assume their first step is still the domestic market in mainland China. And then after that, probably it will extend to Southeast Asia countries, like Mid-Asian countries, who have very tight economic ties with China.
Molong does say there could possibly be issues when it comes to building more planes if geopolitics gets in the way.
Many of the suppliers are from Western companies, so if there are some other issues, geopolitical issues, like banning sales, all these different things, this may affect the delivery of the whole aircraft because they still are relying on those major components from the Western companies.
For now, the flying public will have to contend with high prices and a shortfall to demand of aircraft, although it's not stopping them from taking to the skies. That's our show for this week. Join us on Pearl Magazine, same time next week. Bye for now.